Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. Chloe, why do my breasts hurt and feel so soft? It started with a dull ache, the kind you get when you sleep on your arm wrong, a persistent throb that you try to ignore. But this was different. It wasn't in my arm. It was in my chest. Chloe, I mumbled, my voice thick with the remnants of a wine-fueled sleep. Chloe, wake up. She stirred beside me, a soft sound in the pre-dawn quiet of our apartment. Evan, what is it? Is it work? No, it's my chest. It hurts. I shifted, and the movement sent a sharp, unfamiliar tenderness through my pecs. It's sore and soft. That was the weirdest part. My chest, usually a firm wall of muscle from years at the gym, felt pliable, spongy. Chloe sat up, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. What do you mean? Soft. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mind was already reeling backward, trying to pinpoint the moment things went wrong. It had to be the Christmas party. Just 2 nights ago, I was Evan Brooks, a 32-year-old project manager standing in a stuffy, overheated ballroom, a glass of cheap champagne in my hand. Chloe, a vision in a dark green dress, was at my side. Her presence the only thing making the annual corporate holiday charade bearable. I was complaining, of course, about deadlines, about my boss, about the soul-crushing pressure of it all. I just need a break, I'd sighed, draining my glass, something to just change everything. Chloe had squeezed my hand. Careful what you wish for, especially at a work party. That's when he appeared, a ridiculously fake-looking Santa Claus with a cotton ball beard and a pillow stuffed under his red suit. I recognized the nervous energy instantly. It was Mark from accounting, the guy who always seemed to be watching me with a strange intensity. He'd apparently hired an actor for a special delivery. Ho, 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 the Santa boomed, his voice echoing slightly. He stopped in front of me, a twinkle in his eye that felt more mischievous than jolly. A gift for Evan Brooks, a little something that will change your life. Young man. He handed me a small, elegantly wrapped box. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was a chocolate bar, but it wasn't any ordinary chocolate. It was a shimmering, metallic pink, like something out of a science fiction movie. Everyone was watching, laughing, assuming it was a gag gift, a prank from Mark. I unwrapped it and took a bite. It tasted strange. Sweet, but with a faint, medicinal aftertaste. As I swallowed, a wave of heat bloomed in my stomach, spreading upward through my chest and into my neck. I felt a momentary dizziness, which I chalked up to the champagne. I laughed it off, finished the chocolate, and forgot about it. Until now, lying in bed, the memory came crashing back with terrifying clarity. I threw the covers off and stumbled toward the bathroom, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I flicked on the light, squinting against the sudden brightness, and forced myself to look in the mirror. I didn't scream. The sound was trapped somewhere in my throat, a choked, silent horror. My face. It was still my face, but the edges had softened. The sharp line of my jaw was less defined, my cheekbones somehow higher, but it was my body that held me frozen. I peeled off my t-shirt, my hands shaking. My skin, usually dotted with dark hair and the occasional blemish, was smooth. Utterly, impossibly smooth. It was like looking at someone else's torso. And my chest? My pecs were gone. In their place were 2 small, sensitive mounds of flesh, the nipples dark and exquisitely tender to the lightest touch of the cool bathroom air. They were, unmistakably, the beginnings of breasts. A wave of nausea washed over me. I gripped the sides of the sink, my knuckles white. This couldn't be real. It was a nightmare. I reached down, my hand fumbling with the waistband of my boxers, needing a final concrete piece of evidence that I was still me. And then the world tilted on its axis. Where there should have been the familiar weight and shape of my manhood, there was nothing, just smooth, unbroken skin, as seamless as a doll's. I recoiled as if I'd touched a live wire. My breath coming in ragged, panicked gasps. I stared at my reflection, at this stranger looking back at me, this smooth, soft, feminized version of myself. The 5 o'clock shadow I'd been too tired to shave last night now looked grotesque, a smudge of dirt on a delicate canvas. An overwhelming sense of disgust rose in my throat. I saw my razor on the counter. Without thinking, I lathered my face with shaking hands and began to shave. The blade glided over my skin with an unnerving ease, a silky smoothness I had never felt before. The sensation was alien, a bizarre mix of revulsion and a strange, tactile curiosity. When I was done, I splashed water on my face and looked again. The face in the mirror was now that of a handsome, androgynous boy, or perhaps a plain, striking woman. I didn't know which. I didn't know who I was anymore. I stumbled back into the bedroom, wrapping my arms around myself, trying to contain the tremors that racked my body. Chloe was fully awake now, her expression a mixture of confusion and concern. "Evan, honey, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I opened my mouth to tell her, to explain the impossible, but the words wouldn't come. How could I say it? How could I explain that the man she had gone to bed with had woken up as something else? All I could manage was a choked whisper, "Something's happened to me." The first few days were a blur of denial and containment. I called in sick to work, claiming a sudden, violent flu. Chloe, bless her heart, accepted it without question. Though I could see the worry etched in the lines around her eyes, she knew something was deeply wrong, but she couldn't possibly have guessed the truth. I spent my time locked in the bathroom, staring at my changing reflection. The changes were subtle but relentless. My waist seemed to be cinching inward, just a fraction, while my hips felt fuller. My body hair, which I had always had a fair amount of, simply more vanished. My skin took on a translucent quality, soft and almost glowing. I was becoming a stranger in my own skin, and the terror of it was a constant, cold knot in my stomach. My biggest, most immediate problem was my chest. The soreness had subsided, but the growth had not. They were small, maybe a full A-cup, but they were undeniably breasts. They strained against the fabric of my t-shirts, creating a soft, humiliating outline I couldn't let Chloe see. My solution was crude and desperate. I found a roll of athletic tape in the medicine cabinet and, with a grim sense of self-loathing, began to wrap it tightly around my chest. The tape was harsh and unforgiving. It dug into my sensitive skin, constricting my lungs until each breath was a shallow, labored effort. The pain was a sharp, biting reminder of my new reality. But it was a pain I could control, unlike the formless dread that was consuming me from the inside out. The ruse lasted for 2 days. On the third morning, Chloe came into the living room where I was sitting, stiff and miserable, on the couch. "Evan, we need to talk," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "You're not sick, are you? Not with the flu? Anyway, you're pale, you're barely eating, and you're walking around like you're wearing a corset. What's going on?" Before I could formulate a lie, she sat down next to me and placed a hand on my chest. I flinched, the pressure sending a jolt of pain through the binding. Her eyes widened as her fingers met the rigid, unyielding surface of the tape beneath my shirt. She looked from my face to my chest and back again, her expression shifting from confusion to a dawning, incredulous understanding. "Evan, what is this?" She gently pulled up the hem of my t-shirt. I didn't have the energy to stop her. She stared at the crude, white binding, then met my eyes. I was braced for screaming, for accusations, for disgust. Instead, her face softened with a look of profound sadness. "Oh, honey," she whispered, her voice cracking, "you're hurting yourself." She slowly, carefully, began to peel back a corner of the tape. It came away with a sharp sting, taking a layer of skin with it. Red, angry welts were already forming underneath. My carefully constructed wall of denial crumbled, and I finally broke. The tears I had been holding back for days came in a hot, shameful flood. Chloe held me, stroking my hair as I sobbed against her shoulder, the awkward pressure of my taped chest between us. She didn't ask questions. She just let me cry it out. Later that afternoon, after she had helped me remove the rest of the painful tape and apply a soothing lotion to my raw skin, she left the apartment. She returned an hour later with a small, discreet paper bag. She sat beside me on the bed and placed it between us. I thought this might be better," she said quietly, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "Then the tape, at least until we figure this out. I opened the bag. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a simple, beige cotton bralette. It had no wires, no lace, no padding. It was the most functional, unadorned piece of lingerie imaginable, and yet looking at it made my face burn with a shame so intense it felt like a fever. "I can't," I whispered, pushing the bag away. "Chloe, I can't wear that." "It's just fabric, Evan," she said softly. "It's designed to provide support. It's practical. Please, just try it. For me, I can't stand seeing you in pain." Her logic was infuriatingly sound. My chest ached from the binding, and even the soft cotton of my t-shirt felt abrasive against my sensitive skin. Reluctantly, defeatedly, I took the bralette from the bag. The fabric was impossibly soft. Chloe turned her back to give me a semblance of privacy. With clumsy, fumbling fingers, I slipped the straps over my shoulders. The band was snug but not tight. I reached behind me, my fingers struggling with the tiny hooks and eyes, a mechanism utterly foreign to me. "Here, let me." Chloe's voice was gentle. She turned back and, with a practiced efficiency, fastened the clasp. The moment it was on, a wave of contradictory sensations washed over me. First, there was the profound, undeniable relief. The soft cups lifted and supported the weight of my new breasts, instantly easing the dull ache I hadn't even realized was a constant presence. My posture shifted instinctively, my shoulders pulling back slightly. It was comfortable, frighteningly comfortable. And then came the shame, hot and immediate. I was a man, I was Evan Brooks, and I was wearing a bra. The soft fabric encircling my chest felt like a brand, a symbol of my surrender to this thing that was happening to me. I looked down, and through the thin material of my shirt, I could see the faint outline of the straps. I felt utterly, completely unmanned. Chloe saw the turmoil on my face. A strange, almost playful glint appeared in her eyes, a desperate attempt to inject some normalcy into our bizarre situation. "You know," she said, her voice light, it gives you a good shape." I just stared at her, horrified, and that's when she made the proposal that would change everything, once again. Chloe's attempt at levity morphed into something else entirely, a challenge. Perhaps she thought a dose of shock therapy would snap me out of my spiraling despair, or maybe her scientific curiosity had simply gotten the better of her. "I bet you couldn't do it," she said, a teasing smile playing on her lips. Couldn't do what I mumbled, still trying to process the feeling of the bra against my skin. "Go out in public, as a woman," she stated plainly. "Just for a few hours. I bet no one would even know. If a single person recognizes you, I lose. I'll do all your laundry for a month." The idea was so absurd, so horrifying, that my first instinct was to laugh. But the laugh died in my throat. The thought of it sent a jolt of pure panic through me. Me in public, dressed as I couldn't even finish the thought. "No, absolutely not. That's insane," I said, shaking my head. "Is it?" she countered, her gaze direct. "Evan, you've been hiding in this apartment for days. You're terrified of what's happening. And I get it. I'm terrified too. But hiding isn't going to change it. Maybe if you face it, just for a little while, it won't seem so monstrous." I wanted to argue, to tell her she had no idea what she was asking, but a small, traitorous part of me was morbidly curious. What would it be like to walk down the street and not be Evan Brooks, to be completely anonymous? The thought was both terrifying and, in a strange way, liberating. "Fine," I heard myself say, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. 3 hours. That's it. Chloe's eyes lit up. "Great, I'll help you get ready. We can even give you a name. How about Veronica?" I groaned, but the deal was struck. The next evening, our bedroom was transformed into a chaotic dressing room. Chloe had pulled out a selection of her clothes. "Nothing too flashy," she said, holding up a simple, knee-length navy blue dress. "This should work. It's an A-line cut, so it'll be forgiving." Putting on the dress was another surreal experience. The silky lining whispered against my newly smooth legs. I had never felt fabric move like that. It flowed, it swayed with me. Along with the dress came a pair of pantyhose. The sheer nylon felt like a second skin, a strange constricting sensation that made me hyper-aware of my own legs. The hardest part was the shoes. Chloe had chosen a pair of low, black pumps, just 1.5 inches, she assured me, barely a heel. It felt like a mile. My weight was thrown forward, my balance completely off. I stumbled, my ankles wobbling precariously. My entire posture had to change just to stay upright. I had to shorten my stride, walk with my hips, keep my legs closer together. It was a language my body had never spoken, and I was a clumsy, illiterate student. Chloe guided me through a minimal makeup routine, a little concealer to hide the shadow on my upper lip that I was now paranoid about, a touch of mascara to open up my eyes, a neutral lipstick. When she was done, she handed me a mirror. The person looking back was not Evan. It wasn't a man in a dress. It was a woman, a tall, somewhat awkward woman with broad shoulders. Yes, but a woman nonetheless. The long, dark wig Chloe had bought online framed my face, softening its angles. The makeup made my eyes look larger, more expressive. I was Veronica, and seeing her in the mirror gave me a dizzying sense of vertigo. "Ready?" Chloe asked, her voice soft. I took a deep, shaky breath. "No, but let's go." We went to a quiet Italian restaurant a few neighborhoods over, a place where no one would know us. Walking from the car to the entrance was the longest journey of my life. The cool night air felt strange on my bare legs. The gentle sway of the dress was a constant reminder of my charade. I was convinced every single person on the street was staring, pointing, laughing, but no one was. They glanced, and then looked away, their faces impassive. We were seated at a small table in a corner. I sat down stiffly, trying to figure out what to do with my hands, my legs. Chloe carried the conversation, chatting about her day, her words a lifeline in a sea of my anxiety. And then, I saw him. Mark, from accounting. He was walking into the restaurant with another colleague. My blood ran cold. Of all the places, of all the people, I wanted to slide under the table, to become invisible. I ducked my head, hoping the wig would hide my face. But he saw us. Or rather, he saw Chloe. He walked over to our table, a slick smile on his face. "Chloe fancies seeing you here," he said, his eyes flicking from her to me with a brief, dismissive curiosity. "Mark, hi," Chloe said, her voice admirably steady. "This is my friend, Veronica." I forced myself to look up, to meet his gaze, my heart hammering against my ribs. I prepared for the flash of recognition, the smirk, the inevitable exposure. It never came. He looked at me, really looked at me, and his expression changed. The dismissive glance was replaced by a look of genuine appreciation. He was checking me out. A slow, sleazy smile spread across his face. "Veronica," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "That's a beautiful name. It's a pleasure to meet you." He held out his hand. My mind went blank. My hand felt disconnected from my body as I placed it in his. His grip was firm, holding on a moment too long. "You have a lovely friend, Chloe," he said, his eyes still locked on me. "Well, we won't keep you. Enjoy your meal." He walked away, rejoining his colleague, and I watched him go, my mind reeling. He hadn't recognized me, not a flicker. He had seen a woman. He had looked at me, at this body I was trapped in, and he had been attracted. A hot, confusing blush spread across my cheeks. It was a feeling so complex I couldn't untangle it. There was disgust for Mark, terror at the close call, but underneath it all, there was a tiny shameful spark, a spark of something, validation power. I didn't know. All I knew was that in that moment, as I sat there in my dress and my heels, being seen as Veronica, a fundamental part of Evan had been irrevocably broken. Chloe reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're doing great," she whispered. But I wasn't. I was coming apart. The encounter with Mark left me shaken for days. The fragile peace I had managed to build with Chloe, the cautious acceptance of my new reality, was shattered. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw Veronica staring back, and I remembered the look in Mark's eyes. It was a violation that felt deeper than the physical changes to my body. A week later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. Veronica, it's Mark from the restaurant. I got your number from Chloe. I hope that's okay. I can't stop thinking about you. Can we meet just for a coffee? My hands started to shake. How had he gotten my number? Chloe would never, unless he'd lied. He was persistent. I knew that from work. I ignored the message. A few hours later, another one arrived. Please, it's important. It's about what happened to Evan. The blood drained from my face. He knew the whole thing with the restaurant wasn't a coincidence. It was a test. He was playing with me. A cold, hard ball on anger. The first truly masculine emotion I had felt in weeks. Solidified in my chest. I agreed to meet him. I needed to know what he had done to me. We met at a sterile, anonymous coffee shop downtown. I wore jeans and a loose-fitting hoodie. A futile attempt to reclaim some semblance of my old self. Mark was already there, sitting at a table in the back, looking nervous. Thanks for coming, he said as I sat down. Cut the crap. Mark, I snapped, my voice coming out higher and thinner than I intended. The change was frustrating. Another betrayal by my own body. What did you do to me? The chocolate at the party. Mark flinched. He took a deep breath, and the whole story came tumbling out in a rush of obsessive, twisted logic. He didn't just work in accounting. That was a cover. He was a researcher for a private, highly secretive biotech firm called Strategic Renewal Unit SRU. We specialize in nanotechnology, he explained, his eyes gleaming with a fanatic's light. Specifically, targeted biological agents, the chocolate bar. It contained a custom-designed nanoestrogen compound. It's programmed to systematically rewrite a subject's endocrinology on a cellular level. It's permanent. Evan, there's no going back. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Why, I whispered, the single word holding a universe of pain and confusion. Why me? Mark's gaze softened, and what I saw in his eyes was not malice, but a sick, possessive form of adoration. Because I've watched you for years. Evan, you're brilliant, you're driven, you're everything I admire. I am, in love with you. I stared at him, repulsed. You're insane. I'm a realist, he insisted. Leaning forward, I knew you would never see me. Not as a man. Evan Brooks, the successful project manager, would never look twice at Mark from accounting. But a man like you would need a certain kind of woman. A strong, intelligent, beautiful woman. So I decided to make one. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. You wouldn't love me as Evan. But Veronica could learn to. The sheer, breathtaking arrogance of it left me speechless. He hadn't just changed me, he had tried to overwrite me, to turn me into his perfect custom-made partner. The anger I felt was so profound it made me feel faint. I stood up to leave, to run, to call the police, but my body felt strangely weak, my limbs heavy. The fury was there, but the testosterone-fueled strength to act on it was gone, replaced by a dizzying wave of emotional overload. That night, the final biological nail was hammered into the coffin of my old life. It started with a deep, cramping pain in my lower abdomen. It was a pain unlike any I had ever experienced, a heavy pulling ache that seemed to originate from the very core of my being. I curled up on the bed, groaning, as waves of it washed over me. Chloe, panicked, wanted to call an ambulance, but I knew, with a dreadful certainty, that this wasn't something a hospital could fix. I stumbled to the bathroom and saw the spot of blood in my underwear. It wasn't a wound, it was something more terrifying, more definitive. I was having my first period. The nanoestrogen hadn't just given me breasts and smooth skin. It had built an entire, functioning female reproductive system inside of me. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't a costume I could take off. This wasn't a temporary condition. This was me now, the cramps, the blood, the hormonal surge that left me weeping for no reason. This was my life. I sank to the floor, the cold tiles a shock against my skin, and I screamed, a raw, ragged sound of pure despair. No, I sobbed, pounding a fist against the floor. I'm not a woman, I'm Evan. But the cramps inside me tightened their grip. A cruel internal mockery of my words. My body was telling me a different story. It was a story written in blood and hormones. A story I could no longer deny, lying on the bathroom floor, in a puddle of my own tears and a body that felt like a prison. I finally understood. Evan was dead, and Veronica was just beginning to understand the true horror of her birth. The first period was a psychological breaking point. The cramps and hormonal swings were a relentless, monthly reminder that my body was no longer mine to command. Hope for a cure, for a reversal, withered and died. What was left was a terrifying void, and slowly, painstakingly, a new identity began to fill it. I was no longer Evan pretending to be Veronica. I was Veronica, haunted by the ghost of a man named Evan. Returning to work was the ultimate test. Chloe and I had concocted a story. Evan had taken a job offer in another state, a sudden life-changing opportunity. We'd had a mutual, amicable breakup. It was a flimsy narrative, but in the fast-paced, self-absorbed world of our office, people rarely question things too deeply. A week after Evan left, Veronica started her new job in the marketing department, a position Mark had conveniently arranged. Walking through those office doors as Veronica was surreal. I wore a conservative blouse, tailored black trousers, and low heels, an armor of femininity. The way people looked at me was different. Men held doors open, their eyes lingering a moment too long. Women gave me quick, appraising glances, sizing up my clothes, my hair, my makeup. I was no longer a peer to the men. I was an object of potential interest. To the women, I was potential competition. Mark became my shadow, my self-appointed guardian. He introduced me to everyone, publicly staking his claim. This is Veronica. She's with me. His posture seemed to shout. If a male colleague was too friendly, Mark would appear at my side, draping a possessive arm over my shoulder. It was suffocating. I felt like a caged bird, and he was my gilded cage. My revulsion for him was a constant, bitter taste in my mouth, and yet there was a deeply unsettling part of me that felt a flicker of security in his presence. In this new, vulnerable world, his obsessive protection was a shield. The conflict tore me apart daily. To survive, I had to become Veronica, completely. My life became a series of lessons in a craft I had never asked to learn. The makeup tutorials Chloe had shown me became a morning ritual. I learned the delicate art of applying foundation, the steady hand required for eyeliner, the subtle brush of blush on the cheekbones that now seem more prominent each day. At first, it felt like painting a mask on a stranger, but slowly, the face in the mirror began to feel like my own. Walking in heels was a daily exercise in pain and balance. I learned how the shift in weight distribution made my hips sway, a motion that felt both unnatural and strangely empowering. I learned to navigate cobblestone streets and slick office floors with a grace I never thought I possessed. My voice was my biggest challenge. The higher pitch was a natural result of the hormones, but the cadence, the inflection, the softer way of speaking that had to be learned. I listened to women talk on the subway, in cafes, on television. I practiced in the shower, softening my consonants, adding a slight upward lilt at the end of sentences. Every day was a performance. I was learning to control a body that had been stolen from me, mastering its new curves, its softness, its different center of gravity. I learned the feeling of my now shoulder-length hair brushing against my neck, the slight tickle of my eyelashes against the top of my cheeks when I looked down, the way a pleasant floral scent from my perfume would follow me through a room. Each new sensation was a small death for Evan and a new brick in the foundation of Veronica. And through it all, there was Mark, watching, approving, molding me. One evening, he was working late at my apartment while I made dinner. My laptop was on the coffee table. He was so confident in his control over me that he didn't even bother to password protect his. My own work laptop was in my bag, and on a sudden reckless impulse, I told him I needed to grab a file. I went into the bedroom, but instead of my own bag, I grabbed the spare USB drive I kept in my desk. My heart pounded as I walked back into the living room. "Hey, I can't find the report marketing sent over," I said, my voice carefully casual. "Can I just check your email real quick? It'll just take a second." He waved a dismissive hand, engrossed in his own screen. "Sure, whatever you need, honey." My fingers trembled as I slipped the USB drive into his laptop. A quick file copy. I navigated to his personal folders, my eyes scanning for anything related to SRU. And then I saw it. A folder simply labeled Project Vi. Inside was a single, heavily encrypted file V47 master plan. My blood ran cold. V47, that had to be me. Later that night, after he had gone home, I used a decryption software a friend in IT had once given me to unlock the file. What I found was far more horrifying than I could have ever imagined. It was a detailed project file, filled with cold, clinical language. Subject designation V47, formerly Evan Brooks Objective Phase 1, full somatic and reproductive conversion, creation of a viable female host body, metrics monitor hormone levels, track uterine development, confirm ovulatory cycle. Phase 1 goal, optimal fertility. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just about turning me into a woman for him to love. I was a science experiment, an incubator. I scrolled down, my hands shaking so violently I could barely control the mouse. Objective Phase 2, procreation. Introduction of genetically engineered paternal gamete source, Dr. M.J. Down Collins. Phase 2 goal, gestation of Generation 2 specimen. Dr. M. Collins, Mark Collins. It was his child they wanted. My stomach churned with a violent, acidic rage. I wasn't just a project, I was a vessel, a broodmare for his monstrous ambition, and the child. Generation 2. This was about creating something beyond human. In that moment, staring at the cold, blue light of the screen, my despair burned away, leaving something hard and sharp in its place. Hate. A pure crystalline hatred for Mark Collins and the monsters at SRU. He thought he had created his perfect woman. He had no idea what he had truly unleashed. A new plan began to form in my mind, a plan born of violation and rage. I would not be his victim, I would not be his vessel, I would be his ruin. I would play his game. I would be the loving, devoted Veronica. I would give him exactly what he wanted. I would get pregnant. I would give him his precious Generation 2, and I would use that child, his own creation, as the ultimate proof to expose him and burn SRU to the ground. I would become the mother of his destruction. The charade began in earnest. I leaned into the role of Veronica, the adoring girlfriend. I smiled at Mark's possessive gestures, laughed at his jokes, let him hold my hand in public. Every touch felt like a violation. Every word of affection a lie that tasted like poison on my tongue. But I held my purpose close to my heart, a cold, hard stone of vengeance. He wanted a child. I would give him one. We were married in a small, private ceremony 6 months later. It was a sham, a strategic move. A wedding ring on my finger gave my future pregnancy a veneer of legitimacy that would be crucial later. On our wedding night, I allowed him to consummate the marriage. An act of such profound self-abnegation that I had to completely disconnect my mind from my body. I was Veronica, the willing wife, performing her duty. Evan's ghost screamed in the back of my mind, but I silenced him. He was a liability I could no longer afford. A few months later, it happened. The 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test felt like a death sentence and a declaration of war all at once. The pregnancy was another transformation. An invasion on a scale I hadn't thought possible. My body, which I had just started to understand, was once again not my own. It was a host, a life support system for the Generation 2 specimen growing inside me. Morning sickness was a violent, daily reminder of my condition. My breasts, which I had finally gotten used to, became swollen and agonizingly tender. A deep, bone-weary fatigue settled over me. And my hormones, already a chaotic symphony, became a raging storm. I would cry at commercials, snap with sudden rage, and feel waves of a strange, placid contentment that were not my own. I felt like a puppet, and the child inside was pulling the strings. Mark was ecstatic. He treated me like a precious, fragile incubator, monitoring my diet, my sleep, my stress levels. He saw the changes in my body not as a personal experience, but as successful data points. The gentle curve of my stomach was proof that Phase 2 was proceeding on schedule. My revenge plan was my only solace. I secretly documented everything. I made copies of the V47 file. I recorded conversations with Mark where he boasted about the project's progress. I compiled a dossier that would expose SRU and its monstrous experiments to the world. The baby, this innocent life I was forced to carry, would be my star witness. Its unique genetic makeup would be undeniable proof. The months crawled by, the baby grew, and my belly swelled. A constant, physical reminder of my bargain. I felt the first flutter of movement, a light, ghostly tapping from within. It should have been a magical moment. For me, it was the stirring of my enemy. One night, I was lying in bed, unable to sleep. Mark was snoring softly beside me, and I had one hand resting on my stomach, feeling the occasional soft kick and roll of the life inside. The connection was undeniable, a physical bond that transcended my hatred for its origin. It was a terrifying, confusing mix of maternal instinct and cold fury. "You are conflicted." The voice wasn't a sound. It was a thought, clear and articulate, that bloomed in the center of my mind. But it wasn't my thought. I sat bolt upright, my heart slamming against my ribs. I looked around the dark room, my breath hitched in my throat. "Who's there?" I whispered. There was no answer, just the sound of Mark's breathing and the hum of the city outside. I must be dreaming, the stress, the hormones. It was making me hallucinate. I lay back down, trying to calm my racing heart. I closed my eyes. "Hello, V47. It is good to finally speak with you directly. I have been awake for some time." This time, there was no mistaking it. The voice was calm, intelligent, and it was coming from inside me, from the baby. A cold, paralyzing terror seized me. This wasn't a normal child. Of course it wasn't. Generation 2. What had I been thinking? What are you, I thought, my mind screaming. "I am the one you call Generation 2, the voice replied, its tone devoid of emotion. It was like talking to a highly advanced computer. My neural interface became fully active 37.4 hours ago. I have been analyzing your cognitive and emotional outputs. I must thank you for your cooperation in my development. Host." Host, the clinical. Detached words sent a shiver down my spine. My plan, my meticulously crafted revenge. Did it know? "I have access to your memories, V47, all of them, the dossier you are compiling, your plan to use my existence to destroy my creators." The voice paused, a silence that felt heavier than any sound. "It is a logical, if flawed, strategy. Unfortunately, it is a variable I cannot permit." My blood turned to ice. It knew everything. It had been listening to my every thought, feeling my every emotion, the hormonal swings, the strange moments of peace. Had that been me, or had it been controlling me? "Your emotional state is suboptimal for my continued gestation," the voice stated coolly. "The high levels of cortisol produced by your anger and stress are a potential risk. I have been moderating your hormonal output to ensure a stable environment. From now on, I will be taking a more active role." I tried to get up, to run, but my limbs wouldn't respond. I felt a strange sense of calm washing over me. A warm, fuzzy blanket smothering my panic. It felt good. It felt right. "Do not resist, Veronica," the voice cooed in my mind. And for the first time, it used my name. It was a calculated move designed to soothe me, to disarm me. The serene feeling intensified, pushing down my fear like a chemical tranquilizer. "Everything will be fine. You will carry me to term. You will deliver me safely. You will fulfill your primary function." I lay there, paralyzed, a prisoner in my own body, a passenger in my own mind. My plan was a fantasy. My revenge was a joke. I had thought I was the player, moving the pieces on the board, but I was never even a piece. I was the board itself. In the final weeks, the world outside my body ceased to matter. There was only the burgeoning life inside me and the calm, persistent voice that had become the conductor of my existence. My plan to destroy SRU was a distant memory, a foolish dream from another lifetime. The dossier I had so carefully compiled lay forgotten on a hidden USB drive, a relic of a free will I no longer possessed. The entity I carried, I could no longer think of it as a baby, was in complete control. It regulated my moods with terrifying precision. When stress from Mark's constant hovering threatened to overwhelm me, a wave of placid calm would wash through my system. When a flicker of Evan's old rage surfaced, it was gently smoothed over by a flood of serotonin, leaving me docile and content. I was living in a chemical prison, and the warden was my unborn child. "It is more efficient this way," Veronica. It would explain in my mind when it sensed my muted resistance. Emotional volatility is detrimental to fetal development. Your compliance ensures my optimal growth. I became the model expectant mother. I ate what it guided me to eat, slept when it allowed me to sleep. I smiled serenely at Mark, who preened at my perfect, complication-free pregnancy. He saw a glowing, happy wife. A testament to his genius, he had no idea his creation was already sentient, already far beyond his control. He thought he was the architect, he was merely the obsolete schematic. The day I went into labor, it was the entity that informed me. The contractions will begin in approximately 1 hour. I have initiated the release of oxytocin. Do not be alarmed. I will manage your pain receptors. And it did. The blinding agony I had seen portrayed in movies was a distant, muted pressure. I was a detached observer of my own labor, my body working with terrifying efficiency while my mind floated in a calm, medicated sea. The delivery was quick, clinical. Mark was by my side, his face a mask of triumph. The doctors and nurses buzzed around, marveling at my composure. "She's a natural." I heard one of them whisper. I wanted to scream, to tell them I was a puppet, that the baby in my womb was pulling my strings. But the voice kept me silent, kept me calm, kept me smiling. And then, it was over. A new life was in the room, crying with a startlingly robust set of lungs. They placed the baby on my chest. It was a girl. She was perfect, beautiful, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that seemed impossibly alert. She stopped crying the moment her skin touched mine, her gaze locking onto my face with an intelligence that was deeply unsettling. Mark was weeping with joy. "She's incredible," he whispered, stroking her tiny head. "Look at her, Veronica, our daughter, our future." The voice in my head, which had been silent for the last hour, spoke one final time. It was no longer inside me, but it was connected, a psychic echo from the child in my arms. Phase 2 is complete. The transfer is successful. Thank you for your service. V47, you are no longer required. And then, silence. The chemical calm that had enveloped me for months evaporated in an instant. My own undiluted feelings came rushing back in a tidal wave of horror, grief, and rage. I looked down at the child, his child. Its own creature, and I saw not a daughter, but my replacement, my usurper. The baby stared back at me, her infant eyes holding the cold. Ancient intelligence I had come to know so well. She didn't need to speak into my mind anymore. Her message was clear in that unblinking, knowing gaze. My revenge was a failure. My sacrifice was meaningless. I had served my purpose. I had been the vessel, the incubator, the bridge from one generation to the next. Mark cooed at the baby. Oblivious. He thought he had won. He thought this child was his legacy. He had no idea he was already a relic of the past. Just like me. We were just the biological scaffolding for what came next. The baby blinked slowly, a gesture of finality. A single, clear thought resonated in the empty space in my mind, a parting shot from a consciousness that had already moved on. Now it's my turn.